I love Henri Cartier-Bresson, Bruce Gill. I love all street photographers for the most part. The uber street photographer is the one who's able to use all techniques in all different situations. And I shot really close street photography with a flash. He turned around, he just kicked me super hard. He kicked me so hard that the flash flew out of my hands.
Hello fellow photographers, in this episode I'm talking with Eric Kim. We are talking about taking pictures during important life events such as funeral or wedding, about Eric's photography techniques, problems with social media and much more. My name is Martin and this is podcast about photography. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to be notified when I post a new episode. If you like this content and you think other people might like it as well, consider sharing it with your friends. You can find all the information in the description. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about photography. My guest today is photographer, blogger, and philosopher Eric Kim. Thank you, Eric, for coming. How are you doing?
Rocking the memento mori and just reminding ourselves that photography is the most important thing in life, and remember that one day we will die.
Okay. Congratulations on your beautiful new baby.
Oh, thank you. No, I joined the club. I saw the video of you doing the street photography POV with the baby in the stroller. I'm like, that's super awesome because I'm ever since becoming a new father, like a lot of people are like, oh, once you have a kid, your life's over, blah, blah. But I've actually found it more interesting to
it kind of is.
Figure out creative. Well, I would say it's like trying to figure out clever ways to integrate baby into your photographic lifestyle. So, have the baby bejorn the front strap facing thing. So I've actually been shooting street photography with him, and it's perfect decoy because when I'm shooting street photography and they see a baby, they're not going to be like angry at me for shooting a street photo because they see the baby like, oh, the baby is so cute. And, I've been doing a bunch of selfies with the baby, and I shoot like 1,000 pictures of him a day. So it's actually been a really good new stimulus to my photography.
Okay. Talking about your baby, I know you photographed the birth of your child, right? Mm-hmm. But also other important events in your life, the funeral of your grandfather or your wedding, right? So I wanted to ask you about the experience. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, thank you so much for the question, Martin. That's a very thoughtful one. I think I just had the thought the other day that photography is a tool for curating your memories, your personally meaningful memories. And I was inspired by the thought that, you take these, universal human experiences like, death of a grandparent and even birth of a child. And it's kind of a way to turn it into kind of an artistic experience. And then, I think it's so interesting because when I was photographing the death of my grandfather, it made me actually realize how much I appreciated life, and to bookend that with the birth of my kid and also the wedding. So for me, I like this idea that I could immortalize all of these important life events of my life, which are also quite universal to other people, and to try to make it into something beautiful. And, I don't know about you, but I have a poor memory. So looking back at the pictures is kind of a good way for me to re-stimulate my memories. Because even now, I'm sure you as a father, you also know is that, Seneca is only 4 months old. I don't remember what he was like when he was only 1 or 2 weeks old. So I'll go back to the old picture. I'm like, wow, he was so small. So being able to see the growth is so amazing. But I think the big thing, especially photographing the birth, it's something that I don't think a lot of people have documented it actually. And I have my trusty Ricoh GR III camera always with me. Got yours too? Oh yeah, Ricoh Mafia for life. And so for me, part of it was personally meaningful to me it actually made me feel more connected with the experience to realize how special it was, but also sharing the images to inspire other people. And actually the best thing I actually heard was, oh, after seeing the pictures or seeing your baby, it's like, oh, now I want to have a kid. So I'm like, that's the biggest compliment for me. So if I can make photos, or if my son is cute enough that can inspire other people to have kids, I'm like, I think that's a good idea.
Perfect. And was it, when you look back, was it as you expected it to be before you did it? did you have some sort of idea how you're going to process it? For example, the wedding or the funeral? Because I mean,
Oh, so
if we
yeah,
talk about the birth, it's the different chapter. But
yeah.
did the other events, did it disturb you? You know, being in that kind of situation when you
Mm.
were taking photographs.
Well, that's a great question, Martin. So I'll first talk about my grandfather photographing the funeral, and then talk about the wedding. So I still remember like a few like I don't remember what year. Maybe it was like 2012 or 2013. I'm not sure. I was living in East Lansing, Michigan at the time, and I just got a call from my mom at like 3 a.m. saying, "Oh, your grandpa passed. You just need to come to South Korea immediately for the funeral." I'm like, cool. And at the time, I was really knee deep in shooting film, and I actually had the Ricoh GR I S film camera. It was essentially the film version of this. And my friend Hiroaki from Tokyo, he gave me a bunch of a Neopan 400 film. And so I was like, oh, maybe what I could actually do is, I had a thought for a photo project. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna bring, like 10 rolls of film, and I'm gonna shoot Neopan 400. I'll push it to 1600. So what I did was in my camera, I underexposed it 2 stops, and when I actually processed it myself, and I kind of thought that, okay, if if I shoot film for my grandfather's funeral, I think it'll be a good idea because it'll help me be more present with the moment. Because with digital photography, you'll take, and then a lot of people chimp and they'll always like be looking at the back of the LCD screen. But I wanted it to be fully in the moment and present with the funeral. And at first, I was a little bit concerned about, oh, what would the family think about, me photographing the funeral? And a lot of people thought, but surprisingly, like everyone in my family knows I'm a photographer. So my uncle was like, okay, Eric, go take all the pictures you want. And he even gave me his little digital point and shoot camera, like some like random Samsung, like, crappy old digital camera to take some pictures too. And so actually, I've actually found that photographing my grandfather's funeral, especially because like it was my grandfather's funeral, I'm part of the family. No one actually had any qualms or issues about it. The only moment was, so in Korean culture, the night before the actual funeral procession, there's kind of like this private family viewing that they look at the casket, they open up and see the father. So that was the only moment my oldest uncle was like, Eric, you can photograph it, but you're not allowed to photograph this. And so I put away the camera, and then the family starts crying and seeing the grandfather. So, but I would say for anyone who's interested in photographing death and funeral family members, it's I think it's I think it's a good idea, and I think more people should do it because obviously, like my family, like a lot of families have a lot of family drama, but the the death of my grandfather ironically was able to bring the whole family together. And also, like, I didn't know my grandfather super well, but I felt like photographing the funeral made me somehow feel like a little bit closer to him. And then after I shot the whole funeral, I had like 10 rolls of film, came back to the States. And actually, I hand processed all the film with myself at home, and I also scanned it myself. And so, obviously it's a much more tedious process, but I felt like this sounds so corny, right? Like holding the film and processing it and pulling it out, looking at the images and scanning it myself. Like I felt more like hand tactile connected to the whole experience.
Okay.
So I actually do think that if someone's going to photograph a funeral or something, and if one has experience with film, I would actually recommend people to shoot in film because it's a little bit more difficult, but I think it's more beautiful. And then just shooting Neopan 400, pushing to 1600, really dark and gritty, which I think also evokes the kind of like heavy emotions that I was able to capture. With photographing the wedding at the time, I had the Ricoh GR. I think the GR2 camera or the GR1 camera, I don't remember, the prior version with the flash. Shot in P mode, just had it in my front pocket. And, with wedding pictures, typically, the stereotype is like, oh, it's all like colorful and bright and, like the typical wedding pictures. But I'm like, oh, one of my friends from LA, his name is Robert Larson. He was the first one I knew that he photographed his own wedding. And so I was like, maybe I could also do the same. So I just did the Ricoh GR, kept in my front pocket, and I was able to photograph, Cindy as she's getting ready and behind the scenes. And to me, it's like, she's the most beautiful person in the world. So photographing that, it was so meaningful and fun, and also kind of gave a unique perspective. And then, afterwards, and also having a flash was great. We're like dancing on the dance floor. I'm shooting a bunch of pictures with the flash. And I actually looked back at the wedding pictures, and, my friend Neil, Neil Ta, who made really beautiful, great wedding pictures and a lot of great architecture. And
so you
kind
had
of
another photographer to do
so I had so my friend Neil Ta was able to photograph my wedding for me, and so he shot lots of beautiful weddings, like Canon DSLR, nice colors and stuff like that. But then looking back at his pictures and looking at my pictures, the pictures that I shot feels more personally meaningful to me because I was the one able to also experience that. And so I'm kind of grateful that I had both. But photographing it, I actually felt like, like sometimes people are like, oh, you have to experience the moment, appreciate the moment, put away the camera. But actually, on the contrary, for me, when I'm photographing, something while I'm experiencing it, I actually feel like it's augmented reality, like it's augmented life. Like I could experience the experience more deeply when I'm photographing it because it's more of an acknowledgement that this is actually something special.
Okay. And do you think it evolved you as a photographer? Did you? I mean, it's a question. Did you feel different after experiencing this?
Oh, I felt like before I felt like Charmander, and then someone gets Firestone, and I became the Charizard.
That's what I meant, actually.
Yeah. No, that's actually. Do you like my Pokemon reference?
Yeah.
Oh, Martin, do you remember the episode where Ash tries to give Pikachu the Lightning Stone?
Yeah, and then the Pikachu doesn't want the Lightning Stone, right?
Yeah, he's like crying, and he like hits it away with his tail. And then Ash like, oh, sorry. No, okay, so actually, because I mean, I don't know if you've gone through this, Martin, or maybe even your listeners, is when I was like starting off photography, street photography is my passion, and it's kind of this danger when you put yourself too much into like a small niche or a small bubble where it's like, okay, I can only shoot street photography, and if I shoot anything that's not street photography, it's like it's not legitimate. And so when I was photographing my grandfather's funeral or photographing my wedding, or now even the birth of my child, like even one of my friends, Anthony Larson, he's like, oh, Eric, now that you have a kid, you're gonna be the world's best family photographer, or family that you can take a bunch of photos of your kid, the most photographed kid. And so I think it definitely helped my evolution because I was able to kind of use my street photography techniques, which is kind of like, low key, kind of candid, decisive moment stuff, but also knowing how to interact with my subjects and pose them and stuff like that, especially with Cindy. And especially I think that shooting your own funeral for somebody who's in your family, I think it's not really even about skill. It's really 99% like having the guts to do it, or having the...
Yeah, I think it would be very like,
Yeah, because I mean, like any funeral that any photographer experiences and photographs, it's all going to be meaningful, and it's all going to be very emotional. And I think still the big thing was in my head was like overcoming that feeling, is that like, oh, is this kind of like somehow disrespectful? But I actually felt like in some ways I was giving it more honor. So I would encourage more photographers, when it comes to their funeral, wedding, or even birth. There's this word in Yiddish. Do you know the word? Have you heard of the word chutzpah? Chutzpah,
oh, yeah.
CHU. It's kind of like having the audacity, or having the balls, or having the, breaking social norms to do something interesting. And I think that's almost like the ethos of street photography, is essentially like you're overriding all these commonly accepted social practices to make beautiful art or images. And I think the same applied to photographing my grandfather's funeral, photographing my wedding, and photographing my child. So definitely
was there like a moment was there like a moment during the childbirth that Cindy told you like, Eric, put it away?
That's actually a good question. Oh, so actually one thing I just wanted to mention too is I feel like I didn't give this enough attention, but I actually photographed Cindy's pregnancy too.
Okay.
So actually, after I did the blog post on photographing the birth of my child, I actually did one on photographing Cindy's pregnancy. I actually think that the photographing the pregnancy was far more, in some ways, more intimate than photographing the actual childbirth.
Okay.
Because that's actually a good question. So if I think about it, during the actual child, no, I just photographed. Like honestly, like. If you've experienced it as the birthing partner, right? your partner is in so much freaking pain, and we're both super sleep deprived, that like there's almost this delirious state that they're not like, don't photograph. And then I photographed everything, but the really explicit photos, I don't share those on the internet. I just keep those for Cindy and myself and our family. But I'm so glad that I photographed it, because like probably the most graphic one I have is actually, did you see the picture of the actual Seneca, like with the umbilical cord coming out, like being held like that?
I'm not sure. I saw the blog post of a lot of photos of him. Not sure if I saw that one.
I'll send you the picture later. But it's actually like him the first time he's out with the umbilical cord. Like, it's so graphic and gory, but then because it's in black and white, it doesn't look too intense. So in some ways, shooting black and white was a very good idea, because it was also very dark. Ricoh GR III, excellent high ISO capabilities. I just shot it in like program mode, high contrast black and white JPEG, auto ISO, auto autofocus, and it actually did a surprisingly good job.
Okay.
So yeah, during the birth, there wasn't really a moment where Cindy was like, put away the camera, but it was more of when I was photographing her while she was pregnant, it was just trying to balance the fine lines that like, you want to share intimate, beautiful moments, but I also made the choice to not share the too intimate photos,
okay.
If you know what I mean. Yeah.
Because I have recently reviewed a book by Christopher Anderson. He did the one called PIA, and then he did the one before called Atlas, and he basically made a photography book about his children, kind of like not posing them, but it's like a beautiful compilation of the photographs of the photographs.
Oh, did you like the pictures?
Yeah, I did. Like, I did many of them.
Oh, because actually, what actually kind of inspired me to start like my son or my other project, Seneca project, is Christopher Anderson. He did a project like way back when, like called Sun. I think it was just on the Magnum.
Yeah, that's the Atlas, right?
Oh, is that Atlas? Oh,
yeah,
okay. Because I saw that on the Magnum Photos website, and I was actually really, really moved by that.
Yeah, and then it's like a spiritual successor. The Pia is his daughter, so that's basically same but with different subject.
Which one are better, the son pictures or the daughter pictures?
So I didn't get the book in my hand. I just saw it on the internet, and I think I like maybe the daughter more. There are also some nudes in the Atlas, right? So it's more. It feels more intimate. The son one, and the daughter one, the Pia, feels more art-like.
Oh, okay.
Like he said, he's not like posing her, but that she is expecting to be photographed because she's living like in the family of photographers. So she's often posing for him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so hopefully, if me and Cindy ever have another kid, we have a daughter, this could be a good idea.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. I would also like to talk about your style, because like, at the beginning, I think you pretty much tried like a lot of styles of street photography, right? You did like this flash into your face, like the famous videos. And also you did a lot of, I wouldn't say like a Cartier-Bresson kind of thing, but you also did a lot of videos about him. So I was wondering, how was this evolution of your style? If you wanted to try out everything, or if you got inspired, or if you just got yourself into this kind of box and said, okay, I'm gonna do the flash into your face because I think it's it's pushing me somewhere with my skill.
Oh, good question. Okay, so let me use an analogy. So remember, Martin, when I stayed at your place, you had the rings for the calisthenics at your house?
Yes.
Cool, right?
Yeah.
So, like, actually, one of my other passions is I'm actually really into like weightlifting and powerlifting, like 1 rep max, deadlift, squats, all that fun stuff. But then when quarantine hit, like all the gyms got closed, so I was only able to. So I was like, crap, all the gyms are closed. What am I gonna do? So I actually started going to the park and actually started doing like body weight calisthenics. So taught myself how to do like muscle ups, chin ups on the rings, planches, and stuff like that. And so, like, have you noticed that there's this like this war between like body weight versus weights.
I wouldn't say I noticed there is like a war, but I noticed like there are people who are heavily into one direction and there are other people who are heavily into things.
Or like Apple versus, Android or
Kind of.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like so anyways, my analogy is like I kind of like this idea of street photography. Like you want to become like Batman. Like you have your utility belt, and like because sometimes Batman wants to use the grappling hook, or sometimes he wants to throw the smoke bombs, or sometimes he wants to throw the little bad things, right? And I think it depends on the context and the situation. And I think what actually happens is, okay, and this is like, is it okay if I just speak very like honestly and frankly?
Oh yeah, sure.
So like, okay, first of all, I love Henri Cartier-Bresson, Bruce Gilden. I love all street photographers for the most part. And for me, it was just building up, like trying out a little bit of everything and also incorporating them when need be. I think a lot of people who like, and this is where it's interesting for me to psychoanalyze photographers like Henri Cartier-Bresson. I still love the guy to death. Like a lot of his best work is still undiscovered. It's most of his best work actually, it's quite complex layers, arabesques, curves, and whatnot. But Henri Cartier-Bresson was just like a very shy, timid photographer / human being, and like, his personality was like he didn't really, in my opinion, I don't think he really had the guts to do something like Bruce Gilden to actually get like more into someone's face and stuff like that. But also like with Bruce Gilden, like 90% of it is like charm. Like people, a lot of people say Bruce Gilden is an asshole. He's actually like, I've met him in real life. He's actually a very charming guy. I think the best way I heard the word to describe someone who's charming is somebody who is able to insult you but still make you feel good about yourself. And so, when I first saw Bruce Gilden shooting with the flash, I was actually more interested not in like the technique, but the way the images looked. Like when you see a street photograph shot head on with a wide angle lens with a flash, it just kind of creates this like super epic, like kind of film noir look, especially, someone smoking a cigarette. I love film noir. And so the type of images you're able to create with the flash, it like blew my mind. I'm like, you're able to do that? And then, obviously I'm scared shitless. So I'm like, how can I actually do it? And then a lot of my early YouTube videos of me shooting street photography with the flash was me trying to teach myself the technique and share it with other people, and realize actually 99.9% of the people are actually quite cool with it. With the whole Henri Cartier-Bresson technique, obviously a decisive moment candid is also good. So actually I just kind of, depending on the situation, like, sometimes I just want to capture kind of more from a distance, the decisive moment. Sometimes I want to get up and close and personal. Sometimes I want to like shoot macro mode, fill the frame with them, like kind of shoot more of a street portrait. Sometimes I ask for permissions. Sometimes I do it without permission. And so I think that the uber street photographer is the one who's able to use all techniques in all different situations. And there's even times that like, I'm sure like in Prague too, right? There's sometimes there's just, it's like, it's way too cold outside. There's nobody walking outside. So like maybe you could just photograph the snow or photograph the footprints or photograph architecture. And so I'm trying to expand like my personal definition of street photography and just photography in general. And and actually that's why I like the name of your channel, All About Photography, because like, I really do think that a lot of photographers like most photographers are very insecure people, in my opinion, and everyone tries to pick up their small niche and try to feel like they're the king of the hill of their small little thing. But I really think that if all photographers were able to embrace all forms of photography, more people would just be more productive photographers and just happier, I think.
So expanding your utility belt.
Yeah.
And is it also with the film, because you shot a lot of film, right? You also said buy film, no megapixels.
Yeah,
and then you shoot a lot of like a film color, film black and white, if I'm right. And then you switched to black and white, digital.
Yeah. So the buy film, not megapixels, I got that from like I forget the guy who invented that. I think Eric Kim's famous tagline is probably buy books, not gear. Or more recently, maybe like buy experiences, not gear or stuff. But then, yeah, so I think it was actually really important for me to try out all forms of photography because like, I think all photographers will eventually be interested in experimenting with film at least once in their life, right? And then also, this is also funny too. Like every photographer I know who gets serious about like street photography eventually wants to either try out shooting with a Leica or rangefinder, whether
Yeah.
digital or film. Like it's inevitable. Like every single photographer I know who's had a Fujifilm X whatever or something eventually gets a Leica at one point, and then they might sell it off and get it. And then actually the apex is you start out with like iPhone or a point and shoot, you get a bit DSLR, you get a big lens, you get the big grip, then you get like a Fuji or a Leica, and then you actually end up to the summit, which is probably like a Ricoh GR II or GR III. But yeah, like, and also I experimented shooting like medium format color and shooting this and that. But actually, what I appreciate, like, because right now, like, I far prefer shooting digital black and white because the problem was the technology in the past, even 2010, 2015, the in-camera JPEG settings weren't good enough to look as good as black and white film, the aesthetic and stuff like that. And also shooting black and white film or color film, it helped me actually not look at the LCD screen so much. So even now when I'm shooting, I almost never chimp. Like I just shoot using the LCD screen, but I never review my pictures. And so shooting film certainly gives you the discipline that will help you make you a better digital photographer, in my opinion. And, obviously you got all these hipsters like, oh, film is better than digital, blah, blah. But then like, this is my thought. Everyone loves Tesla and electric cars, right?
Yeah.
How come no one says any love for electric cameras? like it's crazy. We're in the year 2021. I'm like, why are you still driving a car that runs on gasoline? And why are you still producing new cars that run on gasoline? Can you imagine if your iPhone, it needed to have like a gasoline generator to run? And so in some ways, I think, obviously film is great. And, I think it's essential for any photographer's evolutionary purposes. But ultimately, I still think that actual digital photography is superior than film photography. And especially now with COVID and stuff like that, like, there's issues like, sending your film, getting it back. And I've actually found that I've been able to be far more productive as shooting digital. And even simple things with the Ricoh GR III, which is hugely advantageous, is like, the macro mode on the GR III. It's like so good. Like it can focus up to like 3 centimeters. And so even photographing, Seneca's baby hands, I'm able to get such crazy type of images that I wasn't able to get with any other type of camera. And so I think that, shooting digital has actually simplified my life. And just shooting JPEG, I just shoot small size JPEG on the GR III, high contrast black and white. And even lately, I haven't even been using Lightroom. I just use Apple Photos because it's much quicker to load up the JPEG images. And, I have a MacBook Pro. And surprisingly, I think I'm the only one who uses the touch bar to flag my favorite pictures. So for me, anything that could simplify your photographic life, it's probably better.
So you don't find it limiting sometimes, because when you have your Ricoh GR set to JPEG black and white, and then you see something in color, do you regret it sometimes? Like, well, I would like to take it in color, but I can't because...
Well, what I'll actually do is in the back, the adjustment button.
Okay.
Yeah. So, typically I have a high contrast black and white, but if I see something quickly I like in color, I'll just actually switch it to the cross process JPEG mode if I just want to shoot a quick color shot. But this is actually the funny thing I've realized, Martin, is that, okay, so let's say you're shooting street photography and you see like a girl in a red dress or something. And you're like, great, that would be a great street photograph in black and white. And there's actually been situations where I've actually had enough time to quickly shoot one in black and white and then quickly switch it to cross-process color mode and shoot one in color.
Kind of like Joel Meyerowitz.
Yeah. So like Joel Meyerowitz, like I could quickly shoot one in color and black and white so I could compare it both.
Except you didn't have 2 Leicas with you.
yeah. I just had one Ricoh, right? But then, do you know what's actually the funny thing is I've actually realized that even if the color is really, really awesome or the color combination is really awesome, I almost always prefer the black and white one because like this is just like my philosophical aesthetic thought is you see something that's really colorful and beautiful and you're like, wow, that color is so beautiful. I want to remember that color because that color is so impactful. And so you shoot it in color and then you review it afterwards. But when I shoot it in black and white, even something that's very colorful, when I review it, it becomes actually more interesting and mysterious to me because I could tell that the contrast or the tonality of the black and white is very interesting. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was like a really bright red. But then it actually renders more interestingly in black and white. And so one of my thoughts about photography is like for me, actually, I still, I've shot color, black and white, I've done both. Ultimately, I'll still prefer black and white because it makes the world more mysterious. And if you shoot colorful scenes in black and white, it's more difficult to make it interesting. And also, as a photographer looking at my own pictures, it forces me to use my brain to try to remember what looked like in color, which evokes my imagination and my memories actually. And so I think that's why people tend to like black and white photos for like old family memories, because the sense of nostalgia is your brain trying to exercise the brain memory function to recall what it actually looked like, in my opinion. And so in that case, yeah, like the photos, like you already mentioned, like there have been some cases where, I saw something super awesome in color, but I was only able to shoot the black and white. I look at the picture and I'm like, oh, actually, it looks way better in black and white. So actually, all the times I thought I would have regretted not doing the color, I actually prefer the black and white. Interesting, right?
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So talking about, we also talked about the pandemic and everything that happened. What do you think about the state of street photography today? And is it still the same as when you started? What has changed in your eyes in the street photography?
Oh, that's actually a good one. I would say actually the big shift is, this is my personal critique, is street photographers now, like, they're too obsessed with Instagram and Instagram follower numbers, I think. And I think that's a bad thing. Like, for example, when I was starting street photography, like I started seriously in like 2010, 2011. The only thing I think we had then was like Flickr. You remember Flickr, right?
I remember it, but I have never used it.
Yeah, not really, right? And so Flickr, it wasn't about how many followers you had, but it was about how many faves you got, which is like likes, right? So I think the problem is, there's so many talented street photographers today, and I think more people are entering street photography, which I think is a very good thing. But I think the bad thing about contemporary street photography is too many street photographers are chasing the Instagram popularity, fame kind of thing, and I think that's a bad thing insofar much as I think it limits street photographers' creativity because. Okay, so imagine like you're only looking at pictures on your iPhone, let's say on Instagram, whatever, right? The screen is so small. If you want to make an effective composition that'll give you a lot of likes and followers, it tends to be minimal, black and white, underexposed type of pictures. And I love those type of images, but the problem is it tends to favor a kind of a generic look. Like my friend Charlie Kirk calls it like IKEA street photography, okay. Where, it's like nice shaft of light, dude walking by in like a top hat.
So you feel like it sends a wrong trend for photographers, what to look for, like, what to aim for?
Yeah, like it favors too much of people just trying to maximize. I mean, this is not the fault of any photographers, but I think this is just the technology is that, we're all social beings and social media is like crack cocaine. So anything that gives you more likes or followers, you're going to optimize your upload and your photography for that, right? And so in some ways you become less risky because you kind of understand what the formula is to get you a bunch of likes and followers. So like even what I found was the best thing I did for my own personal photographic evolution was like, I think in 2017, I actually deleted my Instagram. I think I had like 60,000 followers or something, but I realized it was kind of fucking with my head in a bad way, is that I would become risk averse to uploading what I thought might be more interesting photos or street photos, but I kind of, low key knew that my followers wouldn't like it because it's so different, right? And so, also other trends in street photography tend to be like, everyone's still kind of on the Alex Webb bandwagon where it's like, like lots of colors and lots of random hands and layers and stuff like that. And then, that type of photography is very important and interesting, but then it becomes more of like this, like people are trying to flex that, I could do the layers and I could do the skills and stuff like that. But then it becomes more about the technique and the composition rather than, are you really shooting street photographs which like speak to your soul or somehow reveal something about your personality or how you see the world. Because like even when I started, shooting street portraits, with permission, people are like, that's not street photography. You can't talk to your subject. But I'm like, yo, like I'm the most social person I know. I like to talk to people. But then other people are like, no, you're not allowed to do that because that's not the way I do it. There's a nice art piece or a quote from the street artist Barbara Kruger. It's like this image, right, of a guy yelling, and he's like, how dare you not be me? And I think that tends to be a lot of the thing that happens in street photography, where everyone thinks that their way of doing street photography is the best and the only way, and they become intolerant towards the other way the other people do it. But like for me, I'm like, yo, I'm like the Baskin Robbins of street photography. I'm like, you can have all the different flavors. I like imagine if you could only have vanilla ice cream for the rest of your life. That would suck.
I only eat vanilla ice cream, but I know what you mean.
or Martin, imagine if someone forced you to only eat like mint chocolate chip ice cream. I don't know how you feel about mint chocolate, but I know some people who hate it.
Yeah,
but I like it that there's like cotton candy. There's cookies and cream. There's some people who eat it with the cone, without a cone, and so like my whole ethos of like the whole open source, open concept is that, the more people who could get into the street photography game and the do it differently, I think the better.
Talking about your style, I just got this. I wonder if you have, if you ever got into trouble with, either shooting people in your face or some other things. And I think I read a post from you or watched a YouTube video, and you also said you were held at the gunpoint. So was it something connected to your style?
Actually, it's funny. So the whole thing being held at gunpoint. So, I'll tell you all the stories. But then the first story about being held at gunpoint was, I was actually vacationing in I was actually teaching a street photography workshop in Mexico City, and actually everything in Mexico City was great. Like, I will still go back to Mexico City in a heartbeat, but then it was just that one crazy freak accident where me and Cindy are walking down the middle of the street at like 3 p.m. on a busy intersection. I'm just walking with Cindy, and there's a dude on a motorcycle who's just kind of awkward in the middle of the street. I'm trying to walk, like, oh, this guy's kind of in my way. And he comes towards me, pulls out the chrome, and he says in Spanish, essentially, give me your shit. And then me and Cindy were like, ah! And I grabbed Cindy's hand, jetted the opposite way, and looked over my shoulder. He put the gun back, and then he drove off. So that's a funny story in the sense that, me and Cindy were like, oh shit, we should have died there. We didn't die. Like, if we had died at the moment, what would we regret in our life? And it wasn't, my photography. It wasn't my career. It wasn't this, that, financial, blah, blah. It was like, oh, we wish we would have had a kid. So that was actually the impetus to have Seneca, start trying to have Seneca, which is totally hilarious. So it's like a near-death experience could promote the life-giving experience.
Okay.
But in terms of the, my other, worst street photography experience, not too much, but then the memorable ones being is I was in Tokyo in like 2011, and I shot really close street photography with a flash, with the Leica, film Leica with the flash, and then this guy like looked, super, cigarette, really badass, and then actually after shooting him, he turned around, he just kicked me super hard. It kicked me so hard, and then this time I was using the off-camera flash. He kicked me so hard that the flash flew out of my hands. And it hit the ground and it broke and like fell into like a million pieces. Another one was I was in Toronto, Chinatown. And I photographed this like old Chinese guy on a bike. And then afterwards he turned around, it like karate chopped me at the back of my neck. But fortunately I have a very muscular neck, so I didn't feel it. But for the most part, haven't had too many. It's like one of those things that we always catastrophize in your head, like how bad it will be. But 99.9% of the time it's fine. Once I had the cops called on me when I think I was in Melbourne, and then, lady called the cops on me, and she's like, this man tried to assault me with a camera, and the cops was like, showed up. They're like, wait, so did he hit you? He's like, no, he shoved his camera in my face. And then the guy just like, yo, just tell the lady you're sorry. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. And then she's like, put him to jail. He's like, hey, hey lady, you're in a public place and he can make photographs. And it's like, just tell the nice lady you're sorry. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And I just kind of walked away, and the lady's like huffing. But that was a good experience because I feel like shooting street photography, it's like kind of like driving a car. It's not a question of if you're going to get into a car accident or not. It's like, when are you going to get into a car accident? And then once it happens, are you kind of prepared to deal with it? So in the context of street photography, all the times that people have yelled at me, called me a pedophile, whatever, right? It's just, I think the big thing is just kind of like to stand your ground and just like apologize. Don't be an asshole about it. Say, hey, I saw a nice moment, or I like your style, or I like your look. I'm just out here making photographs. This is my business card, or this is my website, and stuff like that. And then it's not to be too. This is a pro tip: not to be too apologetic, because sometimes when people apologize too much, people will actually take more advantage of you than if you just hold your ground, apologize once. Hey, look, I'm sorry, and then actually just apologize quickly and just move on. Because actually, technically, if someone grabs your shoulder and tries to yank you back, they've technically committed assault on you, and then technically you could sue them, and then you could get the money and then buy a bunch of Leicas, right?
Okay. I would like to talk to you about your project, because I have what I have here is the
yeah
book, and
you got the last edition.
I have the 30 out of 30. And you don't really publish too many books, do you?
No, not recently, no.
So one thing about the project is, because when I look at other photography books, and they, for example, are about some kind of documentary type of situation, let's say they document an event or something, but with the suits, it feels like you could still keep going, right? So I'm just wondering if publishing a book is something that closes this chapter for you, and then when you see someone in the suit, you're like, now I'm past that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know. That's actually a really great question. So as of late, I've actually been publishing more like PDF e-zines, like e-magazine kind of things. I actually recently downloaded there's something on the Mac called Affinity, I think, Publisher. It's only like $25. Essentially, it's like, a way cheaper version of Adobe InDesign, and it's way easier to use. I used to use iBooks Author before, but I think Apple actually discontinued it. And it's been hugely fun for me to publish digitally PDFs, because it's way faster, obviously way cheaper. It's kind of more open, and anyone around the world could download it. The Suits project was actually very special to me, because it's probably like by far my best like street photography project I've done. It took the most time. I worked on it from like 2010 to like 2017, so I almost worked on it for like 7 years, and like 99.9% of the pictures shot on that project is like film Leica, either an M6 or an MP 35 mil lens, Kodak Portrait 400. A lot of the pictures with the flash, so there's a consistent aesthetic look, and it was shot all around the world, photographing all forms of suits. I mean, the impetus behind the project was, I'm so lucky. I've only been employed for 9 months of my life. I've been self-employed ever since. That 9 months being employed, I felt like a prisoner. I felt like a slave, like a suit, right? Like a suit. Like I had never had to wear a suit, but it was kind of like a metaphorical suit. And it's the idea that, once I get a nice job, make a bunch of money, I'll be happy, blah blah. But actually, you end up being pretty miserable. And now, so like I have a special thing for guys in suits. And so, yeah, I'm always on the lookout for suits, and I always photograph suits whenever I see it. And, when I'm with my street photography friends, like, Eric, guy in a suit, you got to photograph him, right? And like my philosophy on books is, I think the bias in photography is that like, okay, you work on this photo project for like 10, 20, 30 years, and you make one book that's ultimate and definitive and can never be edited, blah, blah, right? But I'm kind of more of like, I kind of like the idea of like editions. So maybe it's better to think of publishing a photo book like an iPhone, right? Imagine if they only made the iPhone 2G. and
Okay.
they never updated it, right? You remember like there was like no copy and paste or no nothing, right? Or they just stopped at iPhone 4
Yeah, we only had
or
them
5.
in Czech Republic from, I guess, 3G.
Okay. So you remember the iPhone 4, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You remember how small it was, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So imagine if they're just like Apple's like, yo, we just created the perfect iPhone. We're never gonna update it. We're never gonna change it. It's gonna be like this for the rest of your lives, right? So for me, I was actually much more about. Did you watch the Zack Snyder cut?
I have a baby and no, I didn't.
Okay. So I think this is a good analogy because I remember. Okay, I'm a huge Zack Snyder fan. I watched the movie 300 like a trillion times and stuff like that, and I like violence and stuff like that. So when I first heard that he was going to make the original Justice League, but he dropped out, and I think I watched the original Justice League on a plane. I was like, why is this movie so bad? Like I was so disappointed by the original Justice League. I'm like, dude, this was like supposed to be the best movie of all time, but like it really like it was so bad. But I wasn't quite sure why I didn't like it so much. But anyways, and then 5 years passes, right? And then I see that the HBO Max they have the new Zack Snyder cut
Okay.
now, and and then actually this is how I was able to do it. Whenever the baby was napping, I watched it. It took me two. I think it took me 2 weeks to finish it. Right?
Okay,
Like
now I
4 or 5
can now
hours.
I can understand.
Okay. So, anyways, so when I watched it, and I recommend you to watch it if you have 2 weeks. It's it's so good. Like it's like a trillion times better than the original. And actually, I consider the new Justice League Zack Snyder cut to be a magnum opus for any superhero movie. Like I think it's actually better than almost any other Marvel superhero movie that I've watched. I
Okay.
think the only thing that comes close is like maybe the original Iron Man. Maybe I actually really like that one, but beyond that, so it was so great. And what I thought was so cool was, the fact that many years later they were able to essentially take old footage, kind of remaster, and then actually the difference between the old version and the new version. The old version, the original version, the director he tried to make it too like funny, like even the color grading it was very like rosy, cheerful, and more saturated and vibrant. But the Zack Snyder cut, when Zack Snyder did it, it like his color grading it was like super dark, like super, heavy, super moody, and also the tone of the film is much darker. Like the electric dude, his dad dies and stuff like that. So it's like a much cooler movie, but it's a much more beautiful movie. And then it inspired me because like let's say even in the context of photo books, if I ever wanted to do a Suits Volume 2 or whatever, right? Is that like either I could make a totally new book with the same subject, or I could take the old book, re-update or refashion it and rechange it, and also like maybe even re-expand it. And I actually think that this is where I'm also for doing more PDF books or PDF zines or whatever, where the new Justice League it's like what 4 or 5 hours, but the only like ain't nobody gonna sit in a movie theater for 4 to 5 hours, right? But this
Yeah.
is where I think that streaming is so good, and like HBO Max is awesome because it allows you to break out of the Procrustean bed of that like 2 hour, 1.5 hour movie for theaters. And now that online streaming has come and disrupted the whole market, you could, you can in theory have a 4 or 5, you can have a 10-hour movie in theory. So that's even where I think publishing ebooks is great because when you're printing a print book, the costs are much more prohibitive, right?
Yeah.
So let's say if I do another version of Suits, I could have like 500 images of guys in suits in it. The reason I wanted to do the print book was we're in Vietnam and we had a local printer we really liked. And also I loved about the suits, the one you have in your hands, the fold flat design.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually something I
Yeah. I
really
love that
liked.
as
It was
well.
like, yeah, because like you typically like you look at a photo book, right? And there's always the gutter, and you have to always like kind of fold it and kind of like break it in half to look at it. And also like who knows? What if one day a huge EMP hits the world and all our digital information is lost? Yeah,
You know who
nice and
else
flat.
also has it?
Who?
The Anu Cartier in the Decisive Moment has
Oh,
the full
really?
flat
Oh,
opening.
hey, look at me. I'm Henri Cartier-Bresson status.
Yeah. Also, the pages are quite thick, right?
Yeah.
So did you why did you pick this material for the paper?
Yeah, because I think it's funny. A lot of academics like to use this word. Now that Cindy's an academic, I can say it. They have you heard of the word materiality?
Okay.
So the material of the thing is very important, right? So this is just like a simple thing. If the paper is too thin, it actually feels very cheap, disposable. It doesn't feel very good quality, right? The thicker the paper is, and then the heavier the paper is, generally tends to feel more substantial and solid and stuff. It's kind of like this is also kind of the stupid thing, right? But for example, if you compare a Fujifilm X100 camera to a Leica M digital camera, the Leica M camera, it's way heavier, it's more solid, there's more brass or whatever material they use, and it feels more quote quality. Technically, it's better to have a lighter camera for street photography because it hurts your neck less. But it's undeniable that things that are like heavier and thicker and more condensed and more like, material, it feels better in your hands. And also part of it is like the whole robustness too, is that like the thicker the paper is, the more longevity it's going to have. If the papers are too thin, like I was recently at the airport and I hadn't been to an airport in a long time and I saw the new magazines. Have you ever seen the new magazines? They're like, the paper is so thin.
Super thin. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like toilet paper. It's like half-ply toilet paper, right? And then like it doesn't feel that kind of quality anymore. And especially that, I knew that this project was so meaningful to me. It took me so long that I wanted to use essentially the best materials possible to create a book that hopefully would last through the ages,
And your approach to photography books is kind of like you publish less books, but more expensive, more kind of like limited kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you publish a lot of like free stuff, like was it like America or something? Or how was it called? You published it as a PDF, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so actually that's another pro tip I'll share with you, Martin, and also your listeners is okay, this is a fact. Like nobody likes to spend money on anything, right? Like we all like free stuff, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I think, this is my thought is, if you kind of want to be more effective in photography, like especially in photography entrepreneurship, my motto is always like, give away 99% of your stuff for free and also try to make it really good. But the 1% of things that you're going to actually, whether it be physical goods, like Haptic Industries, we make the Henri straps and the Eric Kim straps, like do a smaller run of it, but also make it very expensive and more luxury, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, and that seems to be far more profitable and more worthwhile than trying to like, nickel and dime people for every little thing. And especially like, so like even when you think about photography books now, they're almost kind of like luxury products. And I really do encourage people, if they're going to self-publish their own book or even find a publish, whatever. Actually, I recommend people to self-publish instead of finding publishers. Like this is like real talk, the facts I learned, even when I met some really famous photographers. It's crazy, Martin. A lot of these famous photographers who get book deals to publish a photo book, whether hardcover or whatever, they had to front $30,000 of their own money.
Oh, really?
And once the publisher starts selling it, they start to make back that $30,000 or whatever. But inevitably, like photographers are way too over ambitious. Like they make like, let's say a print copy of like 300 or 500. They can only sell like 75 or 100 of them, and they have like 400 books in storage, and they're like $20,000 in debt in the hole. And then so it makes so much more sense to have like a very small run, like like you print your own photo book. You don't need that many. You could make a print edition of 10, 20, 30. I did 30. Just use the best quality of products, and then the people who are really, really like a fan or really enthusiastic about your photography will pick up a copy. And with the PDF digital free stuff, it's also good to just like kind of put it out there, because I also think that there's this negative bias that like people are, a PDF book isn't as legit as a print book. I think in some ways a PDF book is better than a print book in terms of the accessibility and stuff like that. But I think it's best to have both. So I think when in doubt, publish physical things or physical products, but you don't have to make a lot of them.
Yeah.
And And yeah, like it's certainly like a labor of love. My sister Annette, who you met,
Yeah.
she actually hand illustrated the front and back cover and the insides and stuff like that. Creating a photo book and publishing it, self-publishing or whatever, it's really a labor of love. Where like I think if you could do it and you could just break even with the printing, distribution, shipping costs, like you're successful. As long as you don't go into debt for publishing your book, I think you're in the clear because yeah, it's really a labor of love. My sister Annette Kim, she who also did this Memento Mori shirt, which is available in the Haptic shop on my website, and also the front cover of Suits. She hand created it all in Illustrator, so it was a great process where my sister, she designed the front cover, the inside covers and spreads, and also Cindy, she helped organize the whole project in InDesign and also collaborated with the local printers in Vietnam. And, then obviously me, it's my photos and dealing with the edit and publishing and, selling and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really great experience that brought me, my sister and Cindy closer together. And that's where the whole thing with Haptic Industries has been great, where it's like a creative enterprise that is able to engage, my sister's artistic talents, also Cindy's logistical skills, and also like my photography.
Yeah. Talking about books, do you still educate yourself? Do you have any favorite photography books?
Oh, so I got a photo book recently from my friend Charlie Kirk. It's called Katil-Var, Katil space VAR. Essentially, it's a photo project he did in Istanbul in Turkey during the protests. So that was the last photo book that I got. Really, really great images. Lately, actually, more recently, so me and Cindy, we've been living like a semi-nomadic lifestyle, and I'm slowly. It's so funny. I still have like 5 huge boxes of photo books at Cindy's mom's basement somewhere, still just kind of like locked up. But I've been trying to become more minimalist recently and not procuring any more things. So actually what I've been doing for visual inspiration has been interesting. So I went to the magnumphotos.com website, the new one and the old one, and I literally looked through the whole catalog of images of every single photograph Henri Cartier-Bresson has ever shot. There's like 10,000 of them.
Okay.
It took me 3 hours for 2 days, and I looked through all of them straight, and I made some. I think if you Google Henri Cartier-Bresson Eric Kim PDF or something composition,
yeah, I made like a few. You also drew over that, right?
Yeah,
you also
drew
did
over
some
them.
composition
you saw
techniques,
those.
Right?
Yeah, that's cool, right? And so I was like, whoa, that's so awesome. Like I could just see all these great photographers' images online. And I think that's where Magnum is great. And also recently, I kind of got like bored of photography books and photos in general, and I actually started finding more inspiration watching cinema.
Okay.
So I actually, if you go on my blog, I recently rewatched the old Blade Runner and the new Blade Runner, and I kind of did like a comparison between them. And this is my thought is there's so much great composition and inspiration that you could get from cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, even in some ways, much more so than photography, because like you think about it this way, like they spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to make a film. They're going to make sure the cinematography is damn good, right? Whereas like, photographers, you're like, obviously there's huge artistic merit to a photographer doing photos, but then you cannot be as precise in photography because, especially if you're shooting street photography, it's so random. But when you watch a film, everything is so controlled and perfect. So the compositions they can make are such a perfect, beautiful composition. And then the way I see, even watching a film or cinema, essentially it's like watching a high FPS photo book, right? Like it's like you got a bunch of images. So even what I'll do is I'll watch movies on my laptop and I'll pause it and I'll do a screenshot every time I see a nice composition. And then, I'll sometimes I'll draw over it using the screenshot tool or whatever, published to my blog. And so I find a huge amount of inspiration actually watching films. I mean, I think it's hard though, because most of the modern movies being made today, I don't think the cinematography is that interesting. But I tend to gravitate kind of more towards film noir. I'm actually rethinking about rewatching some old films I like
Kurosawa.
Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai.
Okay.
You watch Seven Samurai?
So it's kind of long. So it's like 4 hours, right?
It's
And I
not
feel
that
like
long.
Barbarian. It's like
I think like 2.5.
it me for me. It feels like so long. Like yeah.
Well, I would say no, I think Seven Samurai. It's not. I think it's less than 2 hours. I think it might be like hour and a half or something. But then there's some. I still remember there's some scenes from the movie like when the when the
It's
young teenage boy.
207 minutes. So it's three
Oh,
hours something. Three and a
that's
half
pretty long.
hours.
Okay, it's pretty long. Well,
Okay.
like sometimes what I'll do with movies, I'll watch it in like a 15-minute chunk. Baby starts crying.
Oh
I
yeah,
grab
yeah,
the
yeah.
baby. I'll take care of the baby. So it could take you like 2 weeks to watch, but it's fine. But then I still remember there's some cinematography in Seven Samurai. It's like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, right? The cinematography is so much 10 million times better than anything I've ever seen. Like there's circular compositions, even a simple one like Golden Triangle, the kid like laying in the field of flowers. It's so beautiful. And then like, it's shot in black and white film, and then somehow they're able to make the lighting look super epic. So I'm thinking about rewatching um Seven Samurai. And yeah, I mean, I'm also like you too, Marta. I get easily bored. So like, I'll watch it for like 10 minutes. I'm kind of bored. I'll go off, do something else. I might revisit in a few days afterwards. But I really do think that watching old school cinema, like, Citizen Kane, any of the old black and white film noir, like Third Man, stuff like that, tends to be like sometimes I'll just watch movies on mute and just look at the images. And that's actually like, you know, a much cheaper, accessible way instead of just buying photo books.
Okay. Apart from books, do you have any, I would say, standard photography goals like exhibitions or something?
Okay, so this is actually interesting, Martin, where um, it sounds so egotistical, but I've achieved all of my photo goals in my life, which was like, okay, when I was like 18 years old, or like 18, 19, 20 years old, like I had dreams like, I want to travel the world. I want to like, street photography in Paris, like Henri Cartier-Bresson. I want to get a Leica. I want to, have a solo exhibition. I want to publish a photo book. I want to become famous, blah, 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 right? And, you know, make money through photography, whatever it may be, right? And like, actually almost like I had this epiphany when I was in Vietnam, 2017, which is like, man, that's almost like 4 years ago, right? I
Yeah.
reached all of my life goals. And like for me, I was like on top of the mountain. And I was like, I actually kind of got like low key depressed or existential dread where I'm like, I reached all of my life goals as a photographer. Now what?
Okay.
And there's almost like nothing more for me to feel like I need to achieve or reach for. But actually, then I kind of tried to take it back to basics where I started reading more books on philosophy, aesthetics. I started studying like calligraphy, studying Renaissance art, all art in general, sculpture, poetry, reading poetry and stuff like that. And like recently, like in Zen philosophy, they call this child's mind or beginner's mind. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah.
So like taking things back to the basics and seeing the world again fresh from like a child's eyes, or like even actually when I first started, this is actually the irony where it's like full circle. My first camera was like a Canon PowerShot SD600, like a 1.2 megapixel digital camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I actually felt the most creative, where that's before I knew any genres or
Before you
good
were
or bad, or
restricted.
yeah, like before you even knew what a good photo was or a bad photo was. And this was like even before social media and like before what what comes in. It was just pure experimentation, just pure fun. And then over the time you kind of get corrupted, whatever. So like it's almost like trying to do a hard reset and like start even whenever I get a new phone or I get a new laptop, I try not to restore it from the backup. I try to actually do a fresh reboot because it re-challenges you to see like, oh, is this old notion that I always believed in, is this still a useful notion or not? And especially I think this is the best thing about having a kid. Kids experience everything with brand new, fresh eyes. The first time Seneca just saw something, he just learned peekaboo, right? Like it's so inspirational. Like the first time he sees a tree or a dog, like, and so I'm like, wow, what I'm trying to do is going back to that purity of vision where I'm not putting up boundaries of, oh, this is a good photo, that's not photo, or that's cliche, that's not cliche. I just photograph everything and just kind of figure it out later.
Okay. That's interesting. How do you think the pandemic will impact street photography? Do you think some, things will change in terms of behavior or standards, let's say, what people do, what people don't do and stuff?
Oh yeah. So so you know the Robert Capa quote, if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough.
Yeah, you're not close enough.
Yeah, like now you don't want someone to cough in your face and give you COVID, right? So
so everyone is just gonna get the telephoto lens.
I actually, so I did a street photography workshop recently in Chicago, and I actually, surprisingly, I was able to shoot some pretty good street portraits really close with the Ricoh GR III. And I actually was able to shoot this really great portrait of this woman with this beautiful eyes, and she actually had a face mask on, but her face mask had like these like jewels on it, so I kind of created like a nice little starry pattern with black and white. And so I think that, and actually, like I was probably one of the few photographers I personally knew that was still shooting street photography when the pandemic first hit, because like truth be told, like I'm not that, like even when COVID first hit, I wasn't really that scared of it. Like I wasn't that risk averse. So I was shooting street photography the whole time when there was still no one on the streets. And so in some ways, I think the pandemic, it's actually a good thing for street photography because it shows how important street photography is. Like, I don't know about you, Martin. Like, did you ever, like when pandemic first hit, did you ever look at your old photos before pandemic or like before no one had face masks on?
Oh yeah.
And
did you feel like it was your duty as a photographer to document this kind of thing?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, cause it was so funny because like before pandemic hit, no one would have predicted COVID to have such an effect like this would have ever happened, right? So like I remember, pre-COVID, the whole thing in street photography is like, oh, like everyone's always on their phones. This is so boring, right? And now we're like, oh, to even go outside of your house and do anything is such a privilege. So even now when I'm out, just like even leaving the house and just doing anything, and now, like I don't know how it's in Czech right now, but then in the States or in Rhode Island, like I'm fully vaccinated. Most of my friends I know are fully vaccinated. Like life is kind of going back to normal. Like you could go to an indoors bar.
Yeah, I'm gonna get vaccinated in like 2 days or something. We're kind of slower in this.
Yeah, well, like in Prague right now, like are indoor dining stuff like still open or is it closed or how's it like?
So we just finished the lockdown few weeks ago or like 2 weeks ago or something. So it's slowly reopening, and then you can go to a restaurant if you are vaccinated or if you have a negative test. And this basically applies to a lot of things here.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so exactly. So I think street photography it's really a privilege, I think, to just be a part of society and do anything. And so even when I was shooting street photography during COVID, I would actually do a lot of like grocery street photography because like everything was closed except grocery stores because that's like, a necessity, right? So like I was shooting street photography inside like the Chinese supermarket with everyone with their face masks and stuff like that. And actually ended up becoming an interesting challenge and actually kind of a good thing where the irony is when you have a face mask on and you're shooting street photography with other people with face masks, people aren't really bothered that much because you kind of look like a ninja, and then like when someone has a face mask on, you can't really identify them. They become kind of anonymous. So like no one's really going to come up to you like, oh, did you take my picture? And also because of the social distancing thing, like, like can you imagine if you took a street photo of someone, they got really close to you, it's like, hey, did you take my photograph? And then like no one's going to want to touch you or like speak.
Yeah.
So some ways it's easier to shoot street photography now with the whole pandemic and COVID thing.
Okay. One more question about photography is if you, and this is a question from Samuel Lintaro, the Street Life photography channel.
Oh yeah, what's up, Sam?
Sam. Yeah, and
Sam you're killing it, Sam.
I'm pretty sure he watched
Sam
before,
Life.
but I'm not sure if he's watching right now. Anyways, so he says if you could travel back in time to the moment before starting your blog and your photography, would you do something differently, if anything?
Oh yeah, I would do totally tons of things. Oh yeah, so shout out to Martin and also Sam Street Life. I think his these two guys are definitely killing it with the YouTubies. But yeah, I have lots of pieces of advice. A lot of things I would do differently. So This is just I can just speak random stuff, right?
Yeah, sure.
Off the top of my head. Okay, so my biggest regret is I think I spent too much time on social media. At the time, it was only Facebook, right? Facebook and Twitter. Now I guess it's Instagram. But like, this is my advice. 90. Okay, so let's say your your energy is, let's say your time or your effort, it's out of 100, right? 100%.
Okay.
I would really put 80 to 90% of your efforts on blogging, and then like 10 to 20% of your efforts on YouTube,
Okay.
and just ignore social media, which is Facebook, Instagram, and then everyone hopefully should know that Instagram is owned by Facebook. So I call it Facebookgram, or no one uses Twitter really anymore or anything else. So it's really I would say the best advice. Like, this sounds like the worst advice, but I think it's also the best advice, and I think this even applies today. I think the best advice is like, just delete your Instagram. It's like, it's bad for your psyche. I think it's bad for your photography, and it's also bad for your entrepreneurship, because if you put all the effort you put into social media back to your blog, which self-hosted, WordPress.org, register on Bluehost.com, whatever. I think YouTube is still good, but like, even this is the truth about YouTube is YouTube keeps changing the algorithm, so that's why there's so much fewer views for everyone and subscribers now. I'm lucky because I started YouTube like way back in the game, where the only video camera was the original GoPro, and then this is before there was ads or anything on YouTube. So like, I was just kind of lucky that when I started there was no one. But I think honestly, if I started YouTube today, like, I wouldn't be able to gain a mass following, at least on YouTube, because right now, like, I'm almost intimidated. Like, YouTube's almost too good. Like even now, like, I have like the most rudimentary video editing. I just use iMovie and I just drag in the clips. That's like pretty much it. Like, I would be intimidated to start. I would say, still, ironically, the future is blogging, because blogging is still open source. Also, other advice I would give to photographers is, don't trap yourself within a genre. So Martin, you're pretty smart. It's about photography. That could be about anything photography, which is awesome. And also, to Samuel, street life is for you to not just do street photography, but like, people are gonna want to know what your life philosophy is on, like, just like anything. So it's less about the quote brand. It's more about the individual. So even like, I'm curious what Martin has to say about Japanese anime or Pokemon, or I don't know, maybe, or like even Samuel street life. If like, oh, Sam, I'm interested in what you have for breakfast, or what's your favorite coffee, or what kind of other anime or films you're into. So like, it's not about the brand, it's about you as the individual. So it's like, think of yourself as a photographer. You're kind of like the rock star, and you're kind of the like, even Apple. Like, it's not about Apple, it was about Steve Jobs. Like, Apple was just the offshoot of Steve Jobs. But then now that Steve Jobs is dead, all the new stuff that Apple makes is, like, in my opinion, like, kind of lame, like not as cool as it was when Steve Jobs was still alive. And even Tesla, it's not about Tesla, it's about Elon Musk, right? Like, everyone loves Elon Musk. Like, Tesla is just an offshoot of Elon Musk. Same thing with SpaceX. And so don't only talk about photography or street photography or stuff like that. Talk about everything. Like, talk about your personal philosophy on life and stuff like that. And actually, this is the irony too. This is, Martin, you said that, like, oh, also Eric Kim's also like a philosopher, right?
Yeah.
So like, how, like, I'm gonna ask you, Martin, like, why would you kind of consider me like philosopher, or think about the philosophical side of things?
Well, I mean, because of the things you're posting, mostly like talking about, I would say in general, when you talk about life in this kind of like manner, you would probably call that, like, in Czech you would say like philosophizing. I don't know if that's the word in English, but doing like thinking about this. So I felt like you are in this kind of stage, because like when I look at your blog, but also your YouTube, there is a considerable shift in the form of your content, right? So so this is how you actually approach those platforms. And the videos I found you for the first time used to be the videos about composition and also other things. And also there is someone asking, Hey Eric, you ever think is going back to doing your studies on the master's photography? Loved your series on Vinogrand, Web, Konstantin.
Oh,
I miss them.
thank you.
So, what about this
What's the
type
guy's
of
name?
content?
What's his name?
It's Ravi Dantas.
Okay, Ardanta, it's a sexy name. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely going back to the masters. I think, I mean, maybe this is where I could use like some of your guys' help. Is that like, I think I've almost covered all the masters that I personally know. Like, I don't know any more like dead photographers whose work is quite good. I think I just need to like maybe go back and just kind of like dig a little bit further. I'm also thinking I started a series too, and I'm thinking about continuing. It's like masters of just like art in general. So like, do you know the Bauhaus movement? So even
Architecture.
like, yeah, so like Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, he was like one of the OG Bauhaus dudes. He was a photographer, but also a printer and a painter and an architect and all these other things. And so I'm thinking about expanding the learning from the masters to great question, by the way, expanding the notion to all artists in general. Oh, and also, so going back to so to answer his question, yeah, I'm gonna continue the series, and I'm gonna like, yeah, I'll probably just do like a series like, you know, Ridley Scott, like even famous directors that I like. The new one, the Blade Runner 2419. His name is Denis B or something like that. He's actually really good. I didn't realize he was so good. So maybe I'll do a series on him. And oh yeah, going back to the advice on just like doing things differently in street photography or just my blog and everything, is that like, don't just talk about photography, but also talk about like philosophy and other random stuff. Because like certain point, I'm like, I've talked about everything about photography I want for now. I just want to talk about other random stuff I'm interested, right? So like photography, philosophy, life, death, cinema, you know, poetry, rapping. I got really into powerlifting. I started doing like fitness videos, you know, me flexing, talk about muscle, eating meat, powerlifting. And then it's so funny because like people like, what the fuck? Like, why posting photos of you deadlifting or, you know, posing without your shirt on? But then actually I started getting new followers, like my friend Soren, who's into photography, but he's also really into fitness. So ironically, I've been able to expand my network, more in my influence to like other kind of random niches. And then, or like, you know, some people they're like, oh, you know, who come to my workshops and spend good money to come to my workshop. They're like, oh, you know, Eric, you know, I love your photography, but actually it's really your philosophy, which actually really drew me in. So, you know, the workshop experience is not just about photography, but like more philosophical notions on photography. So I call this notion cross-pollination, where the best way to become the most epic version of you possible is to take all the different random interests you have and just kind of recombine and reconfigure them in interesting ways. That's just not just like photography, but like, you know, photography and coffee, I don't know, photography and fitness. But like, and the great thing with photography now that the iPhone is the most commonly used camera on the planet, you could really recombine photography into anything in life, which I think is super awesome. And yeah, like maybe even something I'm thinking about doing more is like, because you know now a lot of us are growing up, we're having kids, stuff like that. Like doing more like how to be a photographer with a kid, right? Because like a lot of people, that's why your video has been so cool. Because like there's so many people who have kids who is like, oh man, my life's over, I can't do shit no more. And it's like, no, bro, just fucking put that baby on your like you love this, Martin. I've been putting a little Seneca in the baby Bjorn front strap thing. I've been going to the park. I've been doing chin-ups with a baby on my chest. And I've been doing dips with a baby on my chest. It's like a free weight vest. So it's like, I like the idea in life when, you know, when life gives you lemon, kind of make lemonade, kind of like make the best out of what you got.
Okay. Quickly just back to the Instagram. I made myself note because you also said what makes a successful photographer is 90% marketing and 10% skill, right? And isn't Instagram a platform just as YouTube that you could use to, you know, market yourself? If you wouldn't use it to chase the likes.
That's a great question. That's a great question. Okay. Did you ever watch Star Wars?
Yeah.
What's the famous quote?
What's the famous quote? May the force be with you.
The admiral, the guy who looks like a big squid.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. So, okay. I still stand by that notion. Yeah, I think success in photography, entrepreneurship, it really is 90% marketing and 10%, quote, quote, skill, however you
Okay.
want to define that. Because, okay, there's a trillion photographers who are like a trillion times better than me in photography, but I'm like a trillion times better than any of them in marketing, right? And actually, I credit my skills in marketing actually to studying sociology and also like, also kind of like philosophy and, technology, stuff like that. I'm also just kind of interested. But I would say Instagram is, okay, it's a trap insofar much as, so I don't know if you learn about this in Czech public history, but have you ever heard something called sharecropping?
No.
Okay, so fun history lesson. So back in America after the slavery was abolished, right? They're like, okay, you can't have slaves anymore, right?
Okay.
But there has something called sharecropping, and this is the thing is like you had all these poor black people, right? And you had the rich white dudes who had the land, right? They're like, oh, we'll give you this small plot of land, and we'll just kind of rent it to you, and then you could build, you could plant like squashes, apricots, strawberries, whatever you want to have it, and then oh, you just have to pay us a small little fee, but it's your land.
Oh yeah, we had something similar, but called differently. Yeah.
Well, what was it called in Czech?
In Czech, there is this Czech word when the people were bound to the land, and
Yeah,
they
what
had
was it
to.
called?
They basically worked like I would say 3 days for the owner of the land, or 4 days for the owner of the land, and then 3 days for themselves, or something like that. So.
Yeah. So that thing is it good or bad for the guy who's doing it?
Well, it's basically good for the guy who owns the land, right?
All right. So Facebook, Instagram. Who owns Instagram?
You mean like Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah. So Instagram is owned by Facebook, who's owned by Mark Zuckerberg,
yeah.
right? So I invented a notion called digital sharecropping.
Okay.
Where, so with Instagram, for example, like I'm not gonna lie, right now, it's probably the most effective marketing platform in a very superficial sense, right? Because like you get the likes and everyone's on it, whatever, right? But this is what happens. It's going to be like a bait and switch, or it's like they have your balls in a vice, right?
Okay.
Because what happened? Well, I'll give you an example. So like one of my friends who was like one of the first Instagram influencers, whatever, he had like 10 million followers, right? But you know how like Instagram, Facebook, they keep changing the algorithm to favor the sponsored posts and ads. And so like he posts something and not only 1,000 of his followers see the post unless he boosts it by putting in 20, 30 bucks.
Whatever. All platforms do that in the sense when they start, they have a big like, when you start and the platform is young, they promote a lot of posts, a lot of new creators, and once they have the community, they start to push to get the money from the creators.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's also, this is where I'm like telling people to be a little bit wary about YouTube too, because same thing, right? Where if you're working on borrowed land, that land doesn't belong to you. And any moment, so like this is my prediction, within 10 years, Instagram is just going to become Facebook. They're going to probably delete or Instagram's going to get absorbed into Facebook. I think that's going to happen in 10 years, right? Or it's possible 10 years, 20 years from now, Instagram could become the next MySpace, and no one could just use it. Then maybe Snapchat becomes the new king, or whatever product from China or whatever, or TikTok, I don't know, whatever. So I would say Instagram is a trap insofar much as, okay, so my idea of the success, it's all about longevity. So One of the things I'm actually the most proud of is I started in 2010. It's 2021 now. There's been so many Air Kim haters who was like, oh, your stack of cards can fall. Bro, I've been in this game for 11 years. I'm 33 years old. I've been in this game since I've been 21 years old. And longevity is key. Like, you think about the most successful entrepreneurs. Jay-Z, he's been rapping for like 30 years. Kanye, like 2 decades plus. Dr. Dre, Eminem. And, you don't want to be like, Migos, or just like kind of like these rappers or people who like I think it's actually really depressing if you're just successful for 1 or 2 years and then you just kind of fade away. And I think that's the problem. That's the trouble with Instagram is right now it's like the most popular things. But if you observe Gen Z or the younger kid, they don't even use Instagram anymore. They're on like Snapchat or TikTok or some other random shit. They don't even use Facebook, right?
Well, I know what you mean. Like, I would understand that if you said like, if that is your only platform you depend on, then you become a prisoner of what they do. But if that is just one channel you promote your thoughts, then I wouldn't really, feel bad about using that.
Well, yeah. Well, no, that's. I think your point is totally legitimate. What I would still say though is that like, if you took all the energy, things that you otherwise post to Instagram, just post to your blog, it will give you 10x the effectiveness, in my opinion. And it also gives people reason to go back to your blog. And also, I think the problem about Instagram is that it's kind of like I treat Instagram kind of like crack cocaine or heroin, right? Like people are like, oh, heroin, right? It's like, oh, but just do a little bit of heroin. It's okay. No, it's like all or nothing. Like, because how everyone's like, well, everyone's like everything in moderation, right? They're like everything in moderation. I'm like, bro, that's the worst advice ever. I'm like, would you give your kid heroin in moderation, even if it was like, that much, right? So and this is just my personal philosophy, but I'm like, it's either like all or nothing, right? So, I would say, yeah, just in my opinion, the wise thing is just to do abstinence. Just abstinence is key. The first time you took a little bit of heroin, like it's just enough to just kind of fuck with your brain in really bad ways. And I think essentially it's a trap. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. Moving on to the most popular topic in photography. Would you guess what it is? What is it? Let's talk about the gear. So, what is your Ricoh GR IV wish list?
Oh, Ricoh GR IV wish list. Oh, good question. Bring back the flash. Like, why would you get rid of the flash? Like, the flash only made the camera like that much bigger. It's almost like, I think the worst idea that Ricoh had was, let's make the camera like that much smaller, but get rid of flash. That's almost like, yo, I'm trying to lose weight. Okay, just chop off one of your arms. Chop off one of your testicles and you'll lose like half a pound, right? So like that was like kind of my idea of a very foolish optimization. So just add the flashback. That's really the only thing. Other than that, I think that the GR3, it's pretty much a perfect camera. I really love it has the USB-C
charger. Yeah, maybe the flip out screen.
No, I think flip out screen's a bad idea. I don't like the flip out screen. I've actually never been a fan of.
I would love to shoot like from the hip, being able to look down.
You can still do it.
You can do it.
Just put it down. You can still see. Because I think the problem with if you added a flip out screen, it would just make it more bulky, and also the thing will just kind of be like a little bit more flimsy, so it'd be less sturdy. Dude, I don't know about your Ricoh. I've dropped this onto concrete at least like 5 or 6 times, and it's been totally fine. I even give this to like my 2-year-old nephew. He like threw it once. I'm, oh shit, I'll pick it up. Like, okay, cool, solid. But yeah, I would actually say in terms of Ricoh GR IV wish list, add the flash.
No, I think my Ricoh is almost like a new.
Okay,
that's I use it, but I'm still in this. I wouldn't say still in this honeymoon phase, but I still kind of like, because I use the neck strap, so I never really drop it. Because when I drop it, it still stays on my neck.
That's good. Oh, so Martin, what? Because do you still have your M240?
Yes, I do.
So what inspired you to get GR3, and how's that compared to the M240 for you?
So my style with Ricoh is kind of like, I turn it on and do kind of like I'm shooting a video of being a tourist, right?
Yeah.
Kind of style. And then I walk and take a picture. And so with this style, I can take pictures of people and they don't really mind. But with the Leica, I usually have to get like, and it's like pretty obvious. And it's pretty obvious I'm taking picture. So the style is different in the sense that how I how I use it to achieve what I want. If when I have the Ricoh, I'm like walking
Yeah.
towards someone, put the camera into his face and take the picture. But when I have the Leica, it's kind of like it makes, I would say, much more obvious when you take picture.
Yeah. No, it's so funny because I think 99.9% of the mystique of Leica rangefinders, it's really kind of the romanticism / I want to be Henri Cartier-Bresson. I think, but I really think that the GR3 is actually a superior camera. It's like a better camera even at the price point.
So would Cartier-Bresson used Ricoh if he lived today?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if he lived today, he'd either be shooting with a Ricoh or an iPhone, or because like that the thing that this is where studying history is useful. The only reason he shot with a Leica was it was the smallest camera at the time. Because actually, history lesson, when Cartier-Bresson started shooting with the 35 millimeter rangefinder Leica, whatever, right? At the time, serious photographers all shot large format cameras or even medium format cameras, whatever. So yeah, so a compact 35 millimeter camera was almost seen as like what people think of an iPhone today. They're like, oh, that's not a serious camera. The prints look not so good. You can't get it really big. But it was like the smallest, most unobtrusive thing that you could shoot for the time. And so in today's world, obviously, like the goal is to be as unobtrusive as possible, right? And so shooting with a Ricoh just makes so much more sense because like even simple things, right? Like it just like it's small, it's black, you can't really see it, and people don't really take it seriously. And I still think that shooting with a Leica rangefinder is, if you really, 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 really need the ultimate street photography tool where you're trying to shoot layers and you don't want any shutter lag, and you're in a super crowded city like New York, and you don't care being spotted, whatever, and your whole day or week is only going to be dedicated to street photography, then actually, yes, I would say the Leica M camera is probably the best tool. But 99% of the time, like I'm going to the grocery store, or I'm holding, this is actually a useful thing. Having a one-handed camera that has autofocus, I could hold a baby and take pictures. I can't like fucking, have my light.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
F16 and trying to fucking, and then I could even put this in my front pocket, wrist strap, neck strap, whatever it may be.
So with how technology advances, is shooting manual overrated?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone who tries to shoot okay, if you have a film Leica, like an M6 or an MP, whatever, then yeah, of course you're going to shoot manual. That makes sense. But in today's world, to shoot manual, it's almost like there's really no good reason to do it, because the only thing you really need to do in photography, in my opinion, and this is where I actually really like the GR3, exposure compensation.
Okay.
The exposure compensation, minus or plus. This is by far the most useful thing. And this is where the ergonomics of the GR3 is really good, because you can do it so quickly. And this is where I still think that shooting with the Ricoh GR3 is still actually even better than shooting with an iPhone or an iPhone Pro, because this thing, you have to like still unlock it, and you're taking a picture, you kind of drag it down to the exposure. Like it's not ergonomic enough. It's actually more efficient. And also the image quality of the Ricoh GR3, I would still say it's like 20 times better than even the newest iPhone Pro. So it still makes more, and it's like not that much bigger or not that much thicker. So it's cheaper than an iPhone. So might as well just get the Ricoh.
Actually, I think the same, except for maybe different reasons. I kind of feel like having a dedicated tool to something is then I feel like I'm much more productive. Whether with iPhone, I feel like someone calls me or getting text or checking, I don't know, whatever. You probably don't check the Instagram. The same thing happened to me with Kindle. I was kind of like, why would I get Kindle if I have like iPad, right?
Yeah.
And then I kind of got it like a present or something. And I just read like so much more books, right? Because like I go to bed, I take only my Kindle, not my phone, not my iPad, not anything. And then I'm just reading, and then you can highlight stuff, and you can even write, you can even read, in the night, and just like, and then if you think about it, it's kind of stupid. Like, I have already iPad, right? So why would I buy different kind of thing which basically can do the same thing as iPad except less, right? But then I figure out that Kindle being able to do less, actually, that's kind of like a cliche.
That's very
makes me do more.
Well, actually, that's the funny thing too, because actually, so my little niece Amelia, who was like, well, I taught her photography when she was 2 or 3. You would think that a kid would prefer to shoot everything with a phone, but funny enough, she actually preferred using my Ricoh or even my Lumix G9 camera has the viewfinder, because I think kids, they actually really like the tactility.
Okay.
The buttons, the kids like the buttons. And also, like, this is one thing I realized, all the new cars, right? It's all touchscreen, right? I hate that, because when you're driving and you just need to turn on the air conditioner or change the volume, having a physical button is actually really superior. Even the speedometer to see how quickly you're going, right? So like for a while I was driving a Prius, and it only shows the numbers. There's nothing else. The digital instrument is actually inferior to the analog instrument. And so even something I've been realizing watching Seneca, right? Like he's starting to learn how to use his hands and shove his hands in his mouth and whatever, right? There's something really human about our hands. And so anything that becomes more manual, and it's funny because the word manual, it means manu, which is hand. Like a manual thing is something to do with your hands. Like there is something to be said about the manual experience of like touching things with your hands and tactility. We talk about the photo books. There's something different about reading a print book versus reading something on your iPad. You get distracted. And so I think that the most underrated thing in camera is actually ergonomics. So the fact that the Ricoh GR is the smallest camera, but also this grip is actually really comfortable. And all the buttons just kind of make sense. The menus make sense and stuff like that. And it has a quick button. So physical, tactile things are extremely useful. And actually, even with cars, I much prefer driving a manual transmission car than driving automatic, because ironically, when I'm driving manual and I'm actually more focused on the road and I actually enjoy the experience more. Whereas, if you're in an automatic car, you're like changing the station on Spotify or trying to skip through an ad on a podcast or something like that. You're actually more distracted.
I think this thing with the cars and touchscreen you mentioned probably leads more towards the voice commands and stuff that in the future you will just, or say just, Siri, do something or something like that. Oh,
that's a good point. I actually wonder, like, let's say you have a Tesla or something. I wonder if there's just only touchscreen, you actually get into more accidents. Like one of the cars I was in, right? The air conditioner unit is only accessible via touchscreen. I couldn't fucking figure out how to turn on the AC, right? So can you imagine you're driving trying to turn on the AC? Like, you get into a car accident.
Okay. Never thought about it. We have a question. What setting does Eric use for this signature black and white style? He was just doing this on his face, kind of like Daido Moriyama style.
Okay, so who asked the question?
Rosso.
Okay, Rosso. Okay, I'll show you all the Eric Kim settings. Okay, P mode. P mode is the best mode. P stands for professional. that's a joke, right? And if you go into the settings, the JPEG filters, I have this on high contrast black and white mode. And if you press the function button, FN button here, you go into the settings, and you can actually adjust all these settings a little more. So the contrast setting, I have it to +4, which is the most. Highlight +4, shadow +4, sharpness +4, and that's pretty much it. And also, grain effect +3, which is maximum. Everything else is 0. And also what I do is I found that the best pro tip I have about photography is shoot small JPEGs. So I have this on JPEG. I don't even shoot RAW anymore. I think RAW is actually hugely overrated. And even the JPEG size, it's a small size, which is 3360 pixels by 2260 pixels, which is more than enough. And actually the huge benefit of shooting small JPEGs is I just shoot more And when it transferred my photos to my laptop, it's so much faster. I look through the photos so much faster, upload them to my blog media library so much faster. And then about 3,000 pixels wide image is more than enough size you need, actually. Even now, I was shooting with the Pentax 645Z digital medium format camera. I shot that on small JPEG, and the photos still looked amazing because, like, that's the big trap. What am I saying is more megapixels, more problems. Because
Okay.
everyone's like, oh, shoot, big more megapixels, but then you fucking have to buy more SD cards. It takes forever to write to your card, so there's more buffer lag. You have to import it, and then boom, your hard drive runs out of space. Go buy a new hard drive. You try to upload to Dropbox or to the cloud. It takes forever, and then you try to like smaller JPEGs is key. So those are pretty much the settings. And nowadays I just shoot JPEG, import it all to Apple Photos, actually the desktop one. I'll just favorite the ones I like, export it as JPEGs to my Dropbox folder on my laptop, and I'll just upload it to my blog. And that's pretty much my workflow. It's the simplest workflow I've found yet, and I'm quite happy about it.
Okay.
And then the photos look awesome.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, and also a pro tip: if you want more epic photos on the Ricoh GR III, when in doubt, it's always better to underexpose the photos.
Okay.
Because when you underexpose the photos end up just looking more artistic.
Okay.
So -1 exposure compensation, -2. Even on a bright sunny day, if you see a bunch of clouds, shoot at like -2, -3 exposure compensation. So an aesthetic thing I've been experimenting with is try to make the photos as dark as possible, but still able to see something. And then the photos actually just look way more mysterious and interesting.
Okay. Your thoughts about film photography today? Because film is kind of, at least what I see, is having comeback. Like film is not dead. And all those cameras like Mamiya or, the prices are rising and people are getting back to film photography, at least what I feel.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about film photography today?
Yeah, I think film photography is still great and is awesome. And I mean, truth be told, like really, really at the end of the day, if you want the most beautiful aesthetic in the picture, film will always be superior to digital, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I'm at that point where my Ricoh GR III, the black and white mode, to me looks about 90 to 95% as good as my black and white pictures on film. So I used to shoot, Kodak 400 Tri-X, pushing to 1600 using a yellow filter on film Leica, whatever. And the grain effect will always be superior in film because it's actually truly random and there's like stochastic resonance in the noise. It's truly a random noise pattern, which aesthetically looks more beautiful. And even if you watch films like cinema, I think a 35 or 70 millimeter, whatever type of film, it'll always look more beautiful because it's so imperfect. Digital could often look too perfect. But then I watched a new Blade Runner and I watched old Blade Runner. I actually prefer the aesthetic of the new Blade Runner. I think it actually looked more beautiful in terms of the color grading and stuff than the old Blade Runner. It was almost too gritty. I actually kind of didn't like it. So I think every photographer, if they're interested in film, totally experiment with it. You can just get like a disposable film camera, buy a cheap, Canon AE1 film SLR, the Ricoh GR1 cameras, the GR1Ss. They're notoriously, they break down so easily. But if you could find one that's relatively cheap and you want to experiment, that's what I would recommend. If you really wanted to get balls deep with film, a film Leica M6 is fantastic. The Voigtlander 35 millimeter f2.5 version 2 lens, only like $400 is great. Then I got a film Leica M. I actually used to have a film I used to have a digital M9. I actually sold that, and I actually got a film Leica MP. And I have the Summicron 35 millimeter Leica f2 spherical. And the cool thing with that camera is, when Seneca becomes 18 years old, I could give him that camera and it'll still work, right?
Okay.
And then, of course, even 20 years from now, of course, there's still going to be hipsters shooting film and processing film. So I'm not too worried about that. But I think the thing I would say is there's a lot of photographers who want to be seen as like serious photographers who resist shooting digital because they're afraid that it's going to make them lose their legitimacy. So to those photographers, I would actually encourage them to shoot digital, get a Ricoh GR version, GR III, try out the black and white, try even the color process. Color filter is actually really nice. Fujifilm also makes really great filters for their Fujifilm cameras, like the classic chrome and stuff like that. They all look fantastic. So I think, yeah, really the future of digital photography, I think it's going to be more like in-camera JPEG film simulation kind of
Okay.
looks. And as time goes on, they're going to become more sophisticated. Digital added grain afterwards is also a nice aesthetic. But yeah, I would encourage all photographers to try out film. But I think, truth be told, film photography is going to be best as a bridge or a tool to be more appreciative of digital photography, because all photographers go through this, experience it. Once you get into film, you process your own film, you scan your own film. It's such a fucking pain in the ass. When you go back to digital photography, you're like, oh, thank God, this is so much more convenient. And actually, when the reason why I transitioned from film to digital was, um, ironically, film started to become a crutch for me because I was less productive with film. Because, like, film is more expensive. You got to
Oh
buy
yeah.
more film. You got
Takes
to get a
longer to
process, get a
process.
scan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I don't know other people, but with COVID, like I can't really find any labs that are open to process films anymore. And I still think there's like the dark room online or something like that. Some places that do it. I used to get my films processed at Costco, which is like the local drugstore, and they did this for super cheap. Like they would scan it and process it for
Do you
only
think
five
you will
dollars a
ever
roll.
come
But
back
now,
to film?
oh yeah, I still have like I have like 30 rolls of Kodak Portra 400 that are unprocessed, just chilling in my bag somewhere that I haven't had the opportunity to do it.
Not in the
But
fridge.
yeah, like, no, not in the fridge. I'm like, no, it's fine. People get too anal about that. I'm like, no, it's just like in a bag, like probably collecting mildew. Who knows? Maybe it could have the hipster effect. But then, yeah, I'm gonna process and film. And
Okay.
like my hope too is that maybe there'll be new, like, wouldn't it be so awesome if there was like a really easy way to process film at home that wasn't you had to do with your whole canister, you just toss it in and it auto scans. So maybe like that will be good. So I don't ever plan on selling my film camera. But yeah, like when time becomes convenient, yeah, definitely start shooting more film. Who knows? Maybe when Seneca's learning photography, I'll get him started on film photography to
Okay.
just kind of enjoy the joy with him.
Viewers question. Last thing you guys read, watched, learned in photography that inspired you and you could share with us. So do you want to
Okay.
start?
Who asked the question?
Ravidantas again.
Ravi Dantas. Okay. How about Martin? You answer and then I'll answer.
Okay, perfect. So there is a photographer. She's called Bika de Porter. She's a Magnum photographer, and so what she did was she has some projects, and one of them is that she visited a location. She did this with Egypt, I think, and with also in Russia, and she asked people on the street if she could stay at their place and photograph them overnight. So this is basically a project you could just do a book, wrap it up, and call it a project, basically. So and what she did, she came back to the city and did an exhibition and invited the people in, and she let them write. She let them write over.
Oh, cool.
Over the pictures, actually.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
Then what she did is she published a book, not with the photographs, and I'm actually working on the review of the book. And there is a booklet which translates everything at the end.
Oh.
And she published the book like that. So it actually, the point where I'm getting at is that we could take a picture and call it an art, and she took that picture and transformed it into different art, printing the book with the signatures and notes
cool,
and
yeah.
stuff. So that's what I really like, and like
I like that.
I discovered in this book, like something I have not discovered for quite some time, how you can present how you can do a presentation of your work transformed into something else with feedback of other people, kind of like
cool, yeah.
it's not like NFTs, but it's something similar that you are showing the idea of the art and not the art itself. If we say like the art is the photograph itself, and this is the photograph with the comments, so I kind of like it. I like it maybe more than.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool because, man, like the bad thing about photography is there are just like a bunch of like really old grumpy people who are just like, the photograph needs to be unaltered and it needs to be like this and that. But then I really do think that photography is art, and anything you could do to a photograph, whether you remix it, add images, add pictures, whatever you do, I think it's good. Like especially if it adds so much to the story, because that's so much more beautiful. And also like subtle things. You see the handwriting of people, everyone has a slightly different handwriting.
Yeah.
And so that adds more to the art. And also it just becomes much more personal, because I think a lot of photography, especially in this case, tends to be a little bit like exploitative. Like, you hang out with a bunch of like homeless people and, you photograph the homeless people and then you're like, exhibition, right? But then if this photographer invited the people to come see their own photos, it's so much more genuine, because she's going to photograph them in a beautiful, genuine, honest way, that knowing that they're actually going to see the pictures too, right?
Yeah.
Because like sometimes people like, you'll make a photo of somebody and make them look really bad, but like the bad
I'm not
artsy
sure if
photo, I don't
this
know.
was the idea at the start of, or if this was like an afterthought.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. Oh, that inspires me. I might steal that idea and do something like that too.
Yeah.
The Picasso quote, like
the best artists steal.
Good artist copy, great artist steal, or something like that. Okay. Yeah, I think the best thing I've seen recently is I rewatched the new Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
I thought it was awesome. Like it was, I watched the new Blade Runner and then I just rewatched the old Blade Runner. I actually think the new Blade Runner is like 10 times better than the original film. I actually found because like people who are like super diehard fans are like, oh, the new version is never as good as the old one, but I actually think the new one is better. The cinematography, the storyline, the characters, the relationships, the love interest, I also I'm a huge fan of like cyberpunk dystopia kind of future kind of images. So yeah, I saw Blade Runner 2049 and that was awesome. And I also rewatched the old Blade Runner, which is also pretty great. But yeah, Blade Runner 2049, I think it's definitely worth people rewatching. And also I bought it on the Apple iTunes store or whatever. And there's a bunch of extras they show, like other mini stories, which I thought was super awesome and definitely worth the watch.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My last question, it's actually not my last question, but I want to ask you about your future projects, and also about Haptic, what you guys have on the sleeve for.
Yep. So newest product we just released. I don't have it with me, but it's the Air Kim wallet. It's essentially like a dope wallet that has 2 slots for SD cards. So like you're always ready for, because I don't know if you had this with your camera. Have you had it that your SD card ever gets corrupted while shooting with the GR?
Well, I have not shot like that many shots, but it never happened to me.
Okay. It happened to me at least like 20 times where it's like error, cannot write image.
Maybe because you drop it so much.
Maybe. Okay. But even before that, it had issues. But anyways, you could just Google Air Kim wallet or just go to airkimphotography.com/blog/shop or hapticindustries.com. And yeah, made a wallet, and it's probably the most proud product that I am, because like, guys in wallets, like we're always looking for the perfect wallet. And I love the idea that you could design your own perfect wallet or thing for yourself and then actually end up selling it for other people too, because I tested this wallet for almost 7 years. No, not 7 years, 5 years from Vietnam. And so and this is also just like one entrepreneurial thing I've learned. This just applies to everything. It goes back to the Samuel Street Life notion, is create things or design things or make things that you wish you could see manifested in the world, or you wish that you could buy, essentially. Because even when I started doing the street photography workshops, that wasn't even a concept, right? People are like, oh, you can't teach street photography. But then I would, when I started street photography, I wish I could have attended a workshop, because it made things so much simpler. Like it took me like 5 years to teach myself street photography, and now when I do a workshop, I could teach people that in like a day. And so, you know, what I have down the pipeline is I'm planning on doing more like kind of like more like open source, like PDF ebooks or e-zines. I think that's going to be pretty cool. I think other things I want to continue to do is.
Did you consider working with publisher to publish a book?
Oh no, never. Just I think.
Why?
Oh, another piece of advice. Yeah, never work with a publisher. Always self-publish. The reason is, I mean, many, right? Is okay. The only reason you would go with a traditional publisher is for prestige, but for everything else, like profit, money, control, creative expression, publishing yourself is always better. Because once again, I told you the thing. It's like a lot of these traditional publishers, you have to upfront so much of your money, and also often they become so controlling of like I'll give you a real example. So, did you ever read my 100 Lessons I Learned from the Masters of Street Photography book, the ebook?
Yes, I think it's a thin one. Or it's not that thin, but it's like
ebook.
Ebook. Okay, I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I have your master's photography. It's like the yellowish.
Oh yeah,
yellow slash
this
black one.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm talking about I did an ebook, like it's like 300 pages, 100 Lessons I Learned from the Masters of Street Photography, and originally I actually had a book deal to publish that as a book, but eventually I actually ended up saying no to the book deal because my vision was I wanted to have a free PDF version of it available on the internet, but then the publisher said no. So I made the really hard decision of saying no to the publisher and ended up publishing it open source. And I'm so happy that I did that. Because it just gave me so much more creative control. And also I just wanted it to be out there. So working with a publisher, you're just going to have less freedoms, which I think is bad. And yeah, other projects I plan on doing is I'm like I have like, you mentioned NFTs, right? I'm like kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out in like, crypto technologies and, Ethereum.
So are we getting Eric coin?
Yeah. So maybe an Eric coin or like, arsbeta.com, our photo feedback platform. We introduced the Ars coin a while back, but trying to figure out like, I think right now it's been really hard because I'm a new dad. So like I haven't had any energy to do anything else but just keep baby alive. But, I really want to. Okay, so I mean, I'll just share all my entrepreneurial ideas, and anyone's feel free to steal it because they take a lot of work. So I have this one notion called Auto Ars. Ars is the name of the startup that I made. ARS, which is Latin for art. Imagine. Okay, so let's say you go out and you shoot like 1,000 pictures of random shit, right? Imagine if you could just import it to your phone or your laptop, and you could just drag it into an app, and then it would automatically choose your best 10 pictures for you.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be so nice? Or you got a filter, it's like it helps you choose your one best shot or 100 best shots, whatever, right? So that's one idea that I have. That would be a fantastic utility. That'd be the game changer. Because I think the problem now is we have so many photos and we don't have the time to edit and sort through and look through all of them.
And that would be so like a machine learning thing.
Yeah, machine learning, ML kind of thing.
Interested to see if you could pick. I would say, let's say, because, different people, different tastes, right? So if you could just pick examples and then the machine learning would say, okay, so this is what you like. This is what I'm going to pick. Because when I'm shooting with friends, I'm then, posting or showing them what I shot. And then often I leave out some shots, which I think are not worthy. And then they say, okay, those are the best shots you shot. So we have like different opinions about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so like you put a filter like, oh, I want dark and moody or artistic. And then it could help you choose that. Or I just want selfies or.
Oh, kind of. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. I like that idea. So that's one idea. Another idea I had is, this is where arsbeta.com was left off, where like you could upload a picture, right? And then you could request feedback from the pictures. But I kind of want a more like a network where I almost think of it like the Uber for photography, where you could create a platform where people could make real money or Ars coin or Bitcoin or whatever kind of crypto, where people could give you feedback on your photos or help you curate your portfolio or help you improve your photography. And then you could pay them. And then,
Okay.
you know, you see what I'm kind of getting at, right?
I was
I
interviewing
think
the
that,
other day a photographer called Alex Kilby, and we talked about it. And he said that a lot of people just put the photographs on the internet and says, "Give me some feedback," and
yeah,
but they
exactly.
don't ask for what kind of feedback it should be. Like, what are you trying to achieve? I mean, if you're trying to
Oh, that's
shoot abstract photographs and then you post a
oh,
sharp, like knife sharp photograph and ask, give me your feedback, they might not give you what you're looking for, right?
oh. So this takes me to another idea. So maybe like for now, people just want feedback on the composition, right? So another idea I had for some sort of app or technology is imagine like, I do this manually, right? Where you take a picture and you could put it into an app or a program and it would automatically draw the red lines and the leading lines and the circles or whatever
Based on
to analyze
space.
your images.
Ah, okay.
Or even better yet, even, this is one idea I had too, like your iPhone, right? Imagine you're trying to take a picture of a scene and then your LCD screen, while you're shooting the pictures, it would automatically draw the red lines and the circles and the triangles while you're shooting. See, like augmented reality, right?
But
So you're almost kind of like,
isn't it something like Anne Cartier? I mean, it's more like old type of thinking. But Anne Cartier also said that he wishes people never put the grams on the cameras or in the viewfinder, the
yeah.
golden
But then,
ratio
I
and
mean,
stuff.
anything that you could do to aid or improve or assist people, like it's kind of like driving, right? Like they have the guardrails
Yeah.
to prevent you from driving off the road. It's kind of the same thing. Is it like you still need to do it yourself, but you still have some sort of guidance? I mean, um, yeah, I think it'd be huge. I mean, like this is where Henri Cartier-Bresson is so pretentious because he went to art school, like he had a paint like master painter teach him, so he had like the kind of more classical art school education that a lot of people don't have access to. So I think anything that could kind of democratize the access to improving composition, the better. So yeah, so anything that could help people's composition. Another idea I had more recently is called PhotoLink. There's this crypto technology called Chainlink, chain.link, which it was inspired by. But the basic notion is imagine if like you post a picture or you look at a picture and it's kind of like, Google images where they're like, oh, related images. But imagine if you could post an image of yours and then, the machine or something could automatically say, oh, your style looks like this photographer. And this photographer got inspiration from that photographer. Because it was interesting. Someone in the comments mentioned the whole Daido Moriyama thing. A lot of people don't know this, but Daido Moriyama's gritty, dark, black and white style, it's actually not his. He stole it from William Klein.
Okay.
William Klein was the first OG to do the blurry, out of focus kind of, jittery image. And then Daido Moriyama took the idea silently from William Klein, but he got all the credit for it, right?
Okay.
Or even like Bruce Gilden, him shooting with a flash. He actually got that from, you know, Lizette Modell, who was like his teacher, who shot really close with a wide angle. And also, Ouija and, Diane Arbus, also a lot of photographers shooting flash. And so like every photographer kind of steals their ideas from somewhere else. And even Henri Cartier-Bresson, his ideas on composition is all based on the surrealists, right? So I like the idea that in photography, you could kind of like look at an image, like PhotoLink or something could tell you the genealogy or the traits of the image and like who was inspired by who and what, like almost like a photographer family tree. Because yeah, like ultimately everyone was inspired by someone. Even Steve Jobs, his biggest hero was Edwin Land, who invented Polaroid. And Steve Jobs actually imitated his presentation style based on what Edwin Land did in his presentations. So whenever people is like, oh, you're just copying person X, Y, and Z, the truth is like every person steals a combination of ideas from other innovators or artists from the past, but they just kind of recombined it and kind of make it.
Yeah, I'm just in the middle of the biography of Steve Jobs, listening when I'm out and about, like, you know.
Oh, good idea. It's really the best biography thing I think it's ever been written. Even things that Steve Jobs said in the biography, he said he would never make a big iPhone.
Yeah.
And then he died, and they went ahead and did it. And he said it will never add a stylus to an iPad or add a keyboard. And then he died, and Apple wanted to make more profits, and they made that fucking Apple Pencil, and they made the stupid keyboard and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's the Steve Jobs. I might reread that biography. It's really good.
Okay, final question. Why do you take photographs?
Ooh, great question. Is that your question?
Well, all questions are mine, but yeah, you mean if it was asked from the comments? No, it's my question.
Okay.
So my tip is, does it have to do something with the legacy?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it has to do with legacy in the sense that, like, you know, I love the idea that when Seneca's like 21 years old, he could look at the picture and he's like, oh shit, my dad documented my birth. That's awesome. And I think part of it is because, okay, after you're dead, you cannot reap the rewards of your legacy, right? Because you're dead.
Yeah.
But I think philosophically, I like the idea that I could dedicate and devote my life to help assist, you know, future generations of photographers or artists or creators or entrepreneurs, whatever, you know, like helping my son. And that's why I believe so much in open source, putting all this information and knowledge out there, because like, yeah, it's great to me that, like, you know, it's, you know, Martin, it wasn't that long ago we were just chatting, you had the idea for a YouTube channel and you're already killing with YouTube. You've made like 1 trillion videos. Or even like Samuel Streetlife, you know, his like, you know, in my opinion, his kind of like the new era Kim, his kind of like, you know, killing in the street photography world. So I just kind of like it that that like you could kind of like pay it forward. And I think even Steve Jobs said something like this. It's like, you know, he likes the idea that he could leave something behind that could kind of help other people. And it goes back to there are so many people who helped me get to where I am today. And therefore my life duty is also to give back and help the next generation of people. Cause like, you know, I'm so like, certainly I worked hard at what I did, but if I wasn't given the opportunities and the assistance from like all my mentors and books and information and stuff like that, I couldn't have been able to make it where I am today. So I think the biggest reason why I make pictures is it just brings me great joy and delight. The act of making pictures brings me joy. Looking at the pictures evokes joy and sparks joy for me. And also sharing my pictures brings me joy. Teaching other people photography and helping other people find more meaning in their photography brings me great joy. But I think, ironically enough, I think my mission statement is trying to help other people discover why they also make photos.
Thank you once again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to it. You can find this podcast live on YouTube, where you can ask questions in the real time, or find us in your favorite podcast application. Come back next week because I will be talking to Susan Kandel about her book At Home. I'm very happy you are tuning in for another episode of Podcast About Photography. Until next time.